Hey plant peeps, what's up? It's been a couple months since I did a video, so we're now into the start of November, which means I'm another year older. I am now 35, and so my birthday falls around Halloween. This year I went as Seymour from Little Shop of Horrors, and I made this out of styrofoam and some paint and stuff. Pretty sweet, right? I figured it was a good and fun costume for all my crazy interests. So, a general update, I still haven't flasked the seed pods yet. They're starting to mature now and turn yellow, so I expect that'll probably be in the next week or two that I'll do that. Other than that, I don't have a lot of like new stuff in bloom, so I'm gonna kind of do a quick like show and tell of like what's what, and then I want to talk about spikes because I have a lot of stuff in spike right now, and I had talked at one point about in one of my previous videos about Phalaenopsis and temperatures and how like a lot of them are temperature sensitive for that sort of thing, and like let me tell you, a good probably half of my like Phals species now have multiple spikes. Some of them have 2 or 3, which is really awesome. So I'm gonna kind of pull those all out and show those as well. And then I'll do a highlight of some of the species that I've talked about or orchids that I've talked about in the past that I was like, oh, I don't know how they're going to do. Macodes, petola, Stenogyne, pandurata, and then Phalaenopsis lowii, which is now in bloom, and I'll rattle through a few of those and kind of do like an update. And I hope you're doing well. So let's get to it. I'm just going to like whip through the plants so that you can kind of see how everyone's doing. This is the front window area. A lot of the paths are doing quite well. I have a bunch of new growths coming in like this, and some of the other ones like these guys are finally putting on some good size. So yeah, I'm pretty happy. You can tell that it's winter. A lot of the things are starting to slow down. This is that Stenogyne pandurata. The newest leaves are like the largest that I've seen yet. I grow this a lot more like I grow frags, so I keep it evenly moist in the soil area, and it gets nearly full sun. So considering it's supposed to be like a super humid grower, it's doing really well, but it's definitely a big plant. Some of the vandas are doing well. I still don't have spikes on these guys. Lots of roots and growth. And yeah. Everything else is going pretty good. I'm in the process of moving a few things around, so I've got like Phals and stuff out here that I wouldn't normally. This is my, what's it called? Cattleya gutata cerulea, and it's finally got some blooms starting, so I hope that the blooms actually turn it into like flowers and that it is indeed cerulea, but we'll see. Some of those spikes that I was talking about, and then some of the little seedling guys. The Phalaenopsis lowii. I'll take that out later on so we can get a close-up of it. I just kind of wanted to zip through and show you kind of the status of some of the plants. These are the new paths that I got from Marriott Orchids. He came to town or to Calgary last week, so I picked up a couple of the yellow or golden ones. The flowers on these look like gigantic, so I'm excited to see what they look like, but it probably will be at least a year or two until I see them bloom because they're still quite small. And then a bunch of the other smaller plants, the Catacetums are all kind of off. There's a bunch on the top shelf that are all in dormancy already. And then this guy is in bloom, and I don't know, it's got this like color breaking going on, and I'm a little bit concerned about that, so I'm going to keep an eye on it. If it looks like virus in the next couple blooms, and I'm going to toss the plant. But I was showing it to a buddy of mine, and he thinks it's just a mutation, not necessarily virus, because it doesn't look like breakings of the colors, but we'll see. And then some of the Phals and stuff that are my less of my favorite, so they kind of get the bottom shelf and get neglected a little bit more. One plant that I do have in bloom is a dendrobium. It's no ID. I have no idea what it is. It's one of the Phalaenopsis type dens. So let me deal with the light. This area has gotten a lot more bushy. I have a whole bunch of frags that are putting on a lot of size. I have spikes on the go, which is pretty like standard for this time of year. The Phragmipedium Pink Panther is still putting out buds. And then my giant Phalaenopsis, literally massive, has got a new spike on the go, which you can see starting there. And then it's putting out some additional growths from the old spikes. And then down in here are the Macodes petola, and they're like honestly getting so big. It's hard to tell at the angle here. I'll probably take them out and show you afterwards. But the seedlings and stuff are doing really well. I've got some spikes starting on my little seedling. I don't know if you can see down there or not. Yeah, there we go. On my seedlings that I had deflasked about a year ago. There's a, come on, focus. You can kind of see it under there. It's not focusing right now, but I got a few spikes coming, so that's like really great. It's like 13 months, and I've got spikes out of flask, so I'm pretty like stoked about that. The seed pod, one of them is yellowing, which means it's going to probably pop soon. I want one to be dry seed and popped, and then I'll flask all of them. But the reason I want this one to be dry seed is so that I can save a bunch of the seeds, and then because you can save dry seed for like many months, apparently up to a couple years, but my objective there is if I screw it up, then I can retry it a few times and kind of get good at it. It takes about 6 months to a year, depending on the type of orchid, to get us a pod in the first place. And so I don't have many other pods on the go. There are a couple, but really at the end of the day, I want to like test the skill. So we'll see how this goes. And then some more of my like standard Phals. And you can see there's spikes there, spikes over there. There's a spike starting down in there. And like there's a spike there, and there's spikes there. There's like so many spikes going on everything, which is awesome. This one has 3. So there's like 1, 2, the one that's already starting to bloom. And then there's a third one down in there that you can see. Another couple spikes on these ones. So the temperature drop thing is working really well, and I'm super stoked about that. We got a really cold like winter start in Calgary. What I wanted to do was like test that stuff that I had talked about in terms of like seasonal blooming and cooler temps, and there's 2 things I want to try. One, I want a lot more flowers than I've been getting. And typically in the past, I've kept my apartment quite warm, up around 22, 23 during the winter. So this year, I dropped my thermostat to 16. It doesn't go that low all the time because if the people below us have their temperature up, I think we get a lot of radiant heat through the floor or whatever. So it doesn't actually get that cold very often. But the evenings do get quite cool. I would say down to 16 when they're near the windows because the windows are so large. And almost immediately, probably within the first week or 2 after Calgary's cold spring, like snow and stuff already back in October, I started seeing spikes throwing up right away. And then as time went on, and I kept the temperatures cooler, I can see more and more spikes coming out. So some have 2 spikes, some have 3, like I showed you. And then the ones that are continuing to bloom from old spikes are getting like a lot more blooms than I've seen in the past. So A, it's working. And B, I'm super excited about it because in theory, like a month or 2 from now, I'm going to have freaking flowers everywhere. So we'll see, unless I screw something up between now and then. This is my, what's that called? Phalaenopsis schilleriana. And it's got the 1 spike up here, and then it's got a second one coming right there. So when I say that like some of these are doing double and triple, it's because, I think because the more extended cooler periods you have, the more that the plant's able to like invest or like trigger new spikes. I shouldn't say invest in new spikes, that's wrong. But it like indicates that it's time to bloom. So even these in the past, I've gotten 1 or 2 of them that have had the tips start to grow new spikes, but this one has 1, 2, there's 3 starting there, 4, and then it has 2 new spikes down inside. So we're talking about like 6 blooming tips. That's so crazy to me. So I'm pretty stoked about this. As you can see, everything's kind of bushed out a lot more than in previous videos. I'm happy about that. The pH adjustment stuff I think I'm leaning more towards, yeah, it's probably a good thing to do. I see a lot more overall growth in certain species, which is good. The Phalaenopsis Mock Choi Yu has a leaf that is like absolutely gigantic. It's so big. I'll put a photo up, but it's like huge. And so I only can attribute that to I think on those specific ones because of the pH adjustment stuff. And for the most part, I haven't, since I corrected that issue with the pH being too low, I haven't seen any issues with it. The one thing that I will say that I've noticed is that I'm not losing leaves. Like, I've been talking to some people online about how long a Phalaenopsis should hold leaves for, and of all of these, I have maybe pulled 4 or 5 dead leaves this year out of all the plants. So I think if you're giving your phal good nutrients, that leaf drop issue or thing is not a normal or natural thing. It's more an indication that there's a nutrient issue. It'll be interesting to see how long leaves can last. On this one, for example, I know they can last for at least 3.5 years because I've had it for 3.5 years, and the only thing that it's dropped are the like a couple very tiny ones from down under here. So it'll be interesting to see how long Phalaenopsis leaves can actually last for, because it'll kind of give me an indication of like, do they end up looking like this, like a Vanda? I know that they're kind of in a related family, but can they actually end up all looking like that, or do some just not? So we'll see. This is the Phalaenopsis lowii. It finally bloomed. Some of the flowers are jacked up. I found thrips on them. I'm really having a hard time with thrips lately. And for the most part, there's not a lot of them, but like even if there's one on a bud, it causes this sort of like issues, and I hate that. But either way, Phalaenopsis lowii is supposed to be like pretty hard to grow, and it's done fairly well for me aside from that like those issues around the tips and the top, and that's normally because the buds start like really tiny, and then they get into this like, compared to the size of the bud, quite a large flower. And so if there's certain things like if a bug is sucking juices out of the top parts which protect the flower, then it really quickly makes it look all jacked up. I'm excited for this though because I think it's just like a unique flower. It's like quite tiny, right? And I think that there's some really neat potential to hybridize this with maybe some of the novelties and stuff, which there's not a lot of, and maybe there's a reason for that. It might not breed well, so we'll see. Okay, so this next one is Phalaenopsis Li Hai Sung, which is a hybrid by Tetraspis and Marriott. It's going to be in bloom, and so I'll show you the flowers. I love this plant because the flowers smell like cilantro and kind of like florally, but what's interesting is that it's what I had thought would be a summer or warm bloomer, and it is also clearly triggered by either the change in seasonal temperatures or daylight hours, I don't know. But it's definitely one of the ones that's like putting out a ton of new spikes, and that's great because it's kind of taking the qualities of both of these plants, and I think that it'll make for a really great show once it's a specimen size flower. The other thing I've started to do is take a few extra chopsticks when I'm ordering Asian food, and I'm using the chopsticks for steaks. It's a lot easier, plus then you're not reusing stuff between plants. I was really concerned about the possibility of transmitting viruses between plants, and so I didn't want to just take old spikes or steaks and use them in new ones. So I think that the nice thing about the chopsticks is they're about the right height for a lot of the shorter ones, and you can throw them away and they'll break down. It doesn't cause any like major issues to the environment and whatnot. I want to do a quick plug for Orchid Digest. I actually got gifted this from a friend of mine who works for Orchid Digest, so it's kind of like I'm promoting them and being paid for it, but not, because I didn't get paid money. I just got given the magazine. Anyways, this month's Orchid Digest is about Paphs, and it's got a lot of stuff from Harold Kuperwitz, and it's a really like awesome magazine. So the 3 magazines that I'm signed up to is Orchid Digest, the AOS Orchid magazine, and the International Phalaenopsis Alliance, I think it is, or association, and that's a digital magazine. But the quick plug for this is if you're wanting to like learn more about these like growing orchids and stuff, those magazines and stuff are like a good source to like learn stuff like that. I feel like I try and transfer a lot of my knowledge and things that I learned from this, but I also try to avoid like copying any information that they're saying and like directly translating that. So if you're looking for more knowledge, or you really want to like invest in your understanding of those things, then like get the magazines too, because they're pretty, at a bare minimum, they're like great for orchid porn, right? Like look at those photos, it's awesome. Okay, next up, and I talked about this briefly already, but it's the Macodes petola, and I really want to show like how much growth this thing has got. The tallest center growth was the original one, and there's already the other 3, and it just like looks so good. I think that the low humidity, you can see that the leaves are a little bit curled, but overall it's doing like, I'm super happy with it. And frankly, like if I can get this thing to continue growing like this, then I'll start taking cuttings and distributing them to people and stuff like that. But it looks really great. I started giving it a lot more light, like it's closer to my Phalaenopsis light. It gets direct sun in the morning. You can see it was getting kind of leggy because it wasn't getting that. The peat moss mix has worked a lot better than the bark mix. So if I continue growing these kind of jewel type orchids, that's kind of going to be what I do. So next up we'll do Seymour pandurata, and then we're like done. Then I'm gonna let you go do watering, because that's what I need to do. Okay, so this is Seymour pandurata, and it doesn't look that big, right? Like it looks, I think the camera is hard to tell, but for comparison, I'll put this water bottle beside it, sprayer. Let's get it behind there. And it is like a freaking huge plant. So this is supposed to be a hot growing plant from Borneo, I believe. And they, in theory, would not do well in low humidity. But that's what it gets. And the key that I found to growing it is to keep this bottom tray always moist. And then give it ample light. It hasn't bloomed for me yet. We'll see how it goes. Give you an idea of the size of the leaves. They're quite tough and rigid. Overall though, I think it looks super healthy. I think it's a good indication of like, yeah, some of the humidity recommendations on certain plants. Though obviously better, doesn't mean that you can't grow something that you've really wanted. And if you look up Seymour pandurata, it is a freaking cool plant. The flowers are like bright green. My one disappointment, and we'll see how it goes, is that they only last for apparently like a week. So I hope that it blooms in the spring. We'll see how it goes. It's definitely like at least surviving. It's gigantic. It's great. I'm just happy that I've been able to keep it alive, and it's doing better than a lot of the other plants that I definitely wouldn't have thought this would have outshone. There's also a chance that maybe it's a hybrid. It's pretty rare that Seymour pandurata is actually a species. Apparently there's a whole bunch of green type hybrids out there. So we'll see what the flowers look like. But given the size of the leaves, I have a pretty good feeling that it's probably going to be a full-on species, but we'll see. So thanks for watching. I'm going to try and do more videos, especially when the flowers start coming. It's obviously way more fun for me when there's actually a bunch of flowers in there. Though one thing I will say, I'm in the process of getting over a cold, so my voice is kind of froggy. Sorry if I keep going. It's annoying for me, so it has to be annoying for you. But at the same time, like, whatever. I got to get out there and talk about the plants, right? So I hope things are going well with you and your plants. If there's certain things you want me to talk about or bring up or show, let me know, because sometimes I'm kind of hitting a point where I'm like, well, I've kind of talked about the core things that I feel like are must need to know. I probably need to do a repotting video. I think that that's appropriate just because it gives better insight into like how I grow the plants on the inside of the pot. And then other than that, it's like, who knows, right? Whatever. So I hope things are well for you, and talk to you soon. Oh crap, I forgot to talk about the cat. Clyde has gotten much bigger. Hey? He's like a full-grown cat now. He's not even a kitty anymore. We've been having a few problems. He likes to knock my plants over, which is super frustrating for me, but I love him and his fluffy face, and therefore I will put up with all of his damage and destruction to the plants. Right, kitty? Anyways, thanks guys. Have a good one. Ciao.